Hi, my name is MThomas, and I'd like to welcome you to my shop here in Corcoran, Minnesota. I've been a woodworker my entire life. I grew up working for my dad. He was a cabinet maker and home builder. So I've been doing this since before I can actually remember. I think of a story back to he gave me a box of nails and a hammer to keep me busy while he was doing some work, and I think that was one of my first carpentry lessons. From there, I just spent my time working side by side with him, learning how to do different things. I started out on his job sites by sweeping up sawdust and carrying boards around, and sooner or later I started actually cutting those boards and nailing them in place and learning the different parts of building a home, and also working with him in his cabinet shop, learning how to do that, primarily kitchen cabinets. Which is one of my primary focuses, but I also do laundry and bath cabinets. I do games and toys. I've done some furniture, and pretty much anytime I'm able to be out here in my shop working and making sawdust, that's one of the things that I really like to do. So I'd like to take you around the shop a little bit and show you some of my equipment, and as we go, you can think of some questions you might have for me, or anything like that. So I'd like to start by walking over here. And I'd like to talk just a little bit about the history of my dad's shop. In 1972, in rural northern Wisconsin, he bought an old boat factory where they were making wooden boats and early versions of pickup campers. That's where he set up his cabinet shop to start his work, and that's where I started a lot of my history and what I like to do and who I am today. Some of the equipment you see in there, from early 1950s Delta. There's a table saw shown. Underneath the sheet is a planer, there's drill press, and that's some equipment that I still have in my shop today. All right. So my shop is a 28 by 56 pole building that I built myself. I actually had the building put up, but I finished all of the interior, the sheetrock, the insulation. I did hire the concrete to be done, but I primarily did all of it myself, along with help from some friends and family, which is very important to me to be able to have this be part of my own. I heat the space with radiant in-floor heat. I'll just step over here. So this is my electric boiler system that heats the entire building. I keep it set at about 58 degrees for the winter, which is actually a bit warm while you're working. It's a little chilly in the morning when you start out here, but as you get going, it's a really nice temperature. Okay. This is one of my favorite pieces of equipment that not the average hobbyist or woodworker has in their shop. It's an Altendorf sliding table saw. I have this. I got this from my dad, who unfortunately passed away, which is part of the reason why I have a lot of all this equipment. But it's one of the favorite pieces I have. It was built in 1986, actually in Western Germany, before the Berlin Wall came down, which is something I didn't notice until I was actually moving it into my shop here. There's a sticker indicating Western Germany. But I can handle a 5x9 sheet of plywood, which is some of the product that we use building the cabinets. And I can straight line rip, which is one benefit of having this equipment. I don't need my joiner very often. I can buy rough edge lumber or pieces that have bows in them and take that out to give myself a nice straight line. Also able to then cross cut or rip to any sizes that I need. It's a 2,400 pound machine, runs with a 5-horse 3-phase motor. I do not have three-phase power in my shop, so I've got a electric phase converter, which knocks down about 1/3 of the horsepower. But because the motor is so big, it doesn't cause me any problems. I'm able to cut just about anything I need to, and I absolutely love this machine. I'd love to know how many linear feet of lumber that have gone through it between my dad and myself over the years. And it truly is one of my favorite pieces of equipment. And here's another one of my favorite pieces. Early 1950s Delta 13 by 5 planer. This was in the shop that my dad purchased when he started out his business. But at the time it was a box of pieces, because this machine is notorious to have it's got a poor design in a brass worm gear that's inside the drive box. And that was broken at the time my dad bought the shop. He was not a machinist, so he had really nothing to do with be able to fix it, so it sat. And it sat for about 15 years until he gave it to my grandfather, who had a machining background. My grandfather got the parts, but never put it back together. So fast forward another 10 years or so, I got the machine in pieces and was able to put it back together with the help of my grandpa, and now I use it almost on a daily basis. Since then, I've upgraded it to the helical head from the original 3-knife straight system, which, if anyone is ever thinking of doing the helical head upgrade for a planer or joiner, I would definitely advocate it. It makes wonderful cuts. It's much quieter, much smoother, and changing the blades is so much easier. Been very, very happy with this machine. Here I've got a 25 by 2 dual drum sander. Use it for running face frame materials through, or sanding or flattening anything that I need to do. I would like a much bigger machine, but my shop space is limited, and I don't have that luxury. Fortunately for myself, I have a good friend who's got a wide belt drum sander that I can use for things that are larger than this. All right, here I've got a WoodTech shaper that I use for a variety of cuts, making moldings and roundovers and different profiles like that, with a power feed on it. Very versatile machine for me here. One thing I would advocate, I don't have a lot of space. My shop is 28 by 56, and 2/3 of it is dedicated to my workshop. So I need to put everything on wheels so I can move things around as needed for longer cuts or repositioning things as needed. The shop I grew up in was a 30 by 70 building with 2 floors, so I had quite a bit of space, and I had to learn to accommodate and change that. I've talked with a lot of other guild members who do very similar things with equipment on wheels because it's in their garage or just needs to be mobile in some way. A good part of the equipment is actually from my dad's shop, which is special for me. Since he has passed, it's a chance for me to be able to kind of still work with him and think about the things I did with him over the years and the things I learned. I think of an early lesson making dovetail drawers on this Porter Cable Omni jig, of getting through 1 or 2 or 3 corners and then putting the wrong board in the wrong place and having to almost start over again. Every time I mess one up, which isn't often anymore, I'm proud to say, but I think of those times when I would make that miscut and my dad would kind of shake his head and say, okay, you got to start over again. But that's, again, another one of my favorite pieces. Along with woodworking, I do a little bit of metal work, which I learned from my mother's father. He was, as a hobby, he repaired buggies and sleighs and wagons. And my dad was not much of a woodworker, or metal worker, but so the metalworking that I've learned I got from my grandfather. A little bit of welding, a little bit of brazing, different kinds of machining and aspects of that. So I do primarily woodwork in this shop, but I do have some metal work. Moving on here, at the Delta 6x48 sander, that was part of that equipment that came from my dad's shop originally. What I like most about this equipment, it's heavy. It's got larger motors than what today's equipment often has, more horsepower. Because of its weight, it runs more smooth, there's less vibration, and just gives a lot better performance on the end result of the product that I'm making. As I had mentioned, working for my dad, we primarily did kitchen cabinets. And in the late 1990s, my parents purchased a cabin in western Wisconsin, and my dad wanted to do some log furniture and railings and things like that. So we ventured into a new part of woodworking, where cabinetry, everything has to be within a 30-second or closer, and tolerances are very important. Pieces need to be at 90 degrees to each other. So with log furniture, we found out that all of that went out the window. And this is one of the pieces that we bought in order to do some of that log furniture. And I today use it for book matching or cutting any other large pieces that I have. It's a large piece and I don't use it a lot, but when I need it, I'm very thankful to have it. In addition to my Delta planer, I've got this nice DeWalt unit. Trying to keep the blades sharp and keep my cuts good on the Delta planer. I primarily use this for rougher things where I'm not quite as confident if there's damage to it or poor quality in the wood. And then I also take it out on the job sites if I'm traveling somewhere to do an install for a kitchen or something like that, so I have a planer that I can take with me. Here's another piece that I'm very proud of that I spent a lot of time with. This was the top for my dad's original workbench in the shop, and he had it just on 4 legs and with wheels. Because of my limited space, I needed to get a little more creative on how to store equipment and supplies. So I spent a lot of time thinking about what do I use the most while I'm doing my work. And I tried to put those tools and supplies on this face. Things that I need on a regular basis, chisels, pens and paper and punches and different kinds of bits and other supplies. So again, trying to keep those things close to me. Okay. This is the secondary side, things I don't use quite as often or don't need to be as much into reach. Focusing on some of my clamps, sanders, biscuit joiner, and some of the supplies that go with that. And here's a piece that I'm really proud of how I thought to do this. This is a place where I stored my pipe clamps. It's a tunnel that goes all the way through the entire length, so I've got 4, 5, and 6 foot clamps in there that I have relatively easy access to on both ends for when I'm doing glue-ups of panels or frames, as well as some other squares and levels and tools that I have for storage on the end. And here's a view of the other end with some of the other tools and supplies that I have available to me. The bench is on wheels, and I can also lock it in place if I needed to not roll on me, which again is very important to be mobile as well as secure and heavy. All of the weight of the supplies in there make it a really nice stable bench, so it doesn't move around, and it's very, very stable for me. Okay. All right, this is the very first power tool that I probably used when I was a kid. I don't know the exact age, but this was the first piece of power equipment that I was able to use, and I'm very happy to be able to still have it as a good memory of my dad, as well as memory of where I came from and who I am. I'm going to grab... And this is one of the early projects that I made with it. And by the date that I have on the back, I was 10 years old when I made this. Here I've got two different drill presses. Again, it's nice to have one set up for each different kind of thing, different kinds of cuts. This is the 1950 equipment, the Delta. It did need a little bit of repair, and I was very fortunate that Delta still offered support and parts from equipment built in the 1950s, which to me is extremely valuable. Here on the wall, I just have some general storage of supplies and materials. I'm a self-proclaimed pack rat by nature, like I'm sure many of you are. You never know what you're going to need and when you're going to need it, so I try to save the good parts and organize them in a way so that I can find them when I need them. And it's just really nice to have that available to me. Here I've got my grandfather's lathe. This is my grandfather from my dad's side. He was a dairy farmer for his whole life, and when he finally retired from that and moved into town off the farm, he suddenly found out he was bored. He had worked 7 days a week for his entire life, and now with no cows to milk and no fields to work, he didn't know what to do. So he didn't have a lot of space. He had a very small garage and picked up lathe work. And as for those of you that do lathe work, you'll find out that it's something that there's a lot to learn, and it takes a lot of time. And he gradually got better and better and better, and within a few years started making some really nice pieces that I still have as mementos of him. This is a piece of equipment that I don't use very often because I'm focusing on my cabinet work and things like that, but when I do use it, it's very special to me, and it's something that I plan to use more and more as I get older and I'm not able to lift the heavy sheets of plywood and do the bigger jobs. But it's a very fun piece for me to have, and again, makes me think of spending time with my grandfather. And because everybody needs another table saw, not just one, I still have the 1950 Delta that came out of my dad's shop. The Altendorf does not tilt for the blade, so I'm not able to do angled cuts. So that's one thing I do here, as well as any dado cuts or other things that are just more appropriate to do on a conventional table saw. I don't use it a lot, but it's sure nice to have for when you need it. Again, everything on wheels. I can move this around as needed if I need to make a longer cut or reorient the saw in some way. Continuing on with the Delta equipment, I have this 6-inch joiner. And again, because of the Altendorf, this is a machine I don't use a whole lot, but again, when I do, it's nice to have available to me. And also, always keeps me in mind of the time spent with my dad when I was younger. And here we have a Mepla boring machine. This is a dual machine that handles the Euro-style hinge cups, as well as changing a setup to do shelf pins for the inside of cabinets. And this is what I primarily use it for. I can do 4 holes at a time, indexed with stops along the length of the rail. And although it's only 4 at a time, I can do an upper cabinet of shelf pin holes in just a few seconds. It goes very quick, and it's a very fun machine to have. All right. Because my shop is detached from the house, I can get away with not a lot of dust collection where it doesn't get inside our home and make a mess there. And I grew up in a fairly dusty shop. We did not use a lot of dust collection, only on the larger machines. So I primarily have this set up connected to the Altendorf or my drum sander or shaper table, but I do not have my shop set up with all the equipment gathering dust in here. I would like to do that, and it would be nice, but I don't have that set up, and I don't plan to in the future just because I'm used to a dusty shop. I'm also very fortunate that the dust doesn't bother me from an allergy standpoint or something like that. After showing you the shop, I thought it'd be nice to come in and show a project that I worked on. 4 years ago, we had a bug called the 2-line chestnut borer come through our property and kill a majority of the white oaks that we have. These are 100-plus-year-old trees, and we took down at least 25 of them. We saved the best logs and got about 500 board feet of lumber out of it to build this kitchen. And I'd just like to show you around a little bit in here. It's quarter sawn white oak. I designed all of it to maximize the space that we have so that the drawers are only as deep as necessary as for whatever's going into them, so we can maximize our storage. Again, maximizing the space for all of the appliances so that everything fit. We could get as much into this kitchen as possible. We really like to cook, so we have a lot of equipment and supplies for this. So this is one of my favorite aspects of this whole kitchen. I know Lazy Susans are popular, but I've never been a big fan of them. They're a difficult cabinet to build. So I've seen this design a few times in my life and decided to attack it for the first time. Be very honest, it's a difficult piece to build, but I'm glad that we did it and we enjoy the use that we get out of it. Full stack of drawers. It stores a lot of our equipment. We opted to have very few doors on the lower cabinets. In fact, the sink cabinet is the only one with doors. Everything else is drawers, so we don't have to get down on our hands and knees to pull out the ingredients or cooking supplies that we have. A good example of storage, trying to maximize. We have a lot of cutting boards, and it's a very nice way to store them. Again, in maximizing space, we wanted to use every last inch we could. So we have those above the refrigerator freezer combo, as well as rather than just capping the refrigerator, we made this nice little broom closet. Again, the design, worked with my wife and myself on how we wanted to see this, talked to some designers, and this is all laid out on paper. I don't have a CAD system to draw this out, make it fit into the space we had. The cabinet, very simple shaker design. Again, quarter sawn white oak, clear finish. Tried to keep it as simple as we could.